Stand Up.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Friday episode of Stand Up. I'm very excited to share my conversation with librarian and anti-censorship advocate and now author Amanda Jones joining me today to talk about her amazing new book. We're going to hear Oprah Winfrey even talk about here in just a moment. It's called That Librarian, the fight against book banning in America, and it's real good. In it, she shares a story of what happened to her when she stood up against censorship, and all too familiar with the school board fights in my community and much of what I've experienced. I think you're going to love that conversation coming up. I don't have a news segment for you today. It has been a busy week, and I took a day off yesterday to hang out with my brother up at his house in the Catskills, chopping wood for the winter, and I decided to just stay off of my computer, and it was wonderful. Thank you for your patience on it. Thank you to everybody who joined me at the Hangout. Really fun Hangout. Over 60 people hanging out, talking about all kinds of things for over 2 hours last night, and it's one of the best parts about being a member of the stand-up community, those Hangouts. So sign up now, patreon.com/Pete Dominic. It's the end of the month, so if you've never signed up, if you're thinking about paying more, now would be the time. Right here at the end of the month, most important time, because that's when they pay you at Patreon at the end of the month. Really, the first week of the next month is usually when you get your payout through Patreon. So thank you very much. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. And great to see those of you who are and have been members of our community for such a long time. We had such a fun time last night. Gareth Sever closing with another hilarious, amazing, poignant song. But another member of our community, Kevin Richburg, who's a farmer in upstate New York, good friend of mine. Both these guys have become, it was just really poignant and wonderful. A very serious conversation as well about several different things. Ooh, if you are a member and a subscriber, you'll get the link and you can rewatch it or watch it for the first time because I tape them all and then I share them right there. So there you go. All right. Well, like I said, I don't have a news segment, but I do have the great Amanda Jones. She is a really wonderful person, a brave woman, super smart woman who I had on the show for the first time. And you know what? Let Oprah Winfrey tell you about Amanda Jones. But when she was the keynote speaker at the National Book Award ceremony in New York City, she talked about Amanda Jones in her keynote speech. Listen to this.
Had been linked to somebody who was disgruntled about the right to read. Amanda Jones, a Louisiana School Librarian, in July of 2022, went to a public library board meeting to speak out against an attempt to ban books. And that day, she showed up at that meeting as just a concerned citizen. She didn't say where she worked. She just spoke about the importance of having diverse books. Immediately, she had her work address leaked. People began posting nonstop, making accusations about her abusing the young readers at her library. Children she dedicated 23 years of her life to educating. She started getting death threats, all for standing up for our right to read. And 2 years later, she's still nervous to go out in her community. She has her groceries delivered, she says, but she's not stopped fighting against book bans or stopped advocating for access to diverse stories. The numbers back her up. This year, the nonprofit First Book found that just 6 months after diverse books were added to classroom libraries, classroom reading time increased by 4 hours per week.
All right. Well, I don't want to interrupt Oprah, of course, but I've got to get to my conversation with the woman that she was just talking about, who was an educator for 22 years, the president of Louisiana Association of School Librarians. She's won so many awards. She started some really important organizations where she lives in Livingston Parish, Louisiana. You got to get this book. Real excited to share this conversation with her. The fight against book banning in America. Amanda Jones, everybody. Oh my gosh, there she is. A real life hero. Amanda Jones, welcome to Stand Up for the first time. You are the quintessential person to be on this show. You've been standing up for your whole life and career. I am so excited to talk to you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, congratulations on the book. Congratulations on the amazing reviews and attention from some of the most influential, best people in the world. Oprah, what do you do with that, Amanda?
I almost fainted, actually. Oprah, I've gotten to meet. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about yet all the people I've gotten to meet. I do have a lunch date set up with author Jason Reynolds coming up, so that's exciting.
Very cool. Yeah, you are on fire right now because of your integrity. That's the great thing. It's not because you did some stunt on YouTube, the way that people get famous cheap or something. It's because of actually years of credibility as an educator and a librarian. Let me ask you a cheesy, fun question to open. Can you generalize about librarians and the type of people that they are and what you need to be a librarian, or is that not fair to librarians?
It's a wide range, but I will tell you that my very first national conference, I was pleasantly surprised because you have the stereotype of wearing your hair in a bun and wearing a cardigan. And we do love our cardigans. But no, it's when you go to a national conference, people from all walks of life. And the one thing that we all seem to have in common is our camaraderie and our loyalty to each other and to our patrons and students. We're very loyal.
You certainly are, and you're very dedicated as well. I mean, I read about and saw how you handled your role during COVID and how you actually were able to get kids engaged. So hard to do, even in person, much less online, and how you did it. You're so obviously dedicated. So I guess, where I want to start is, when we get into the book and your career and why you wrote it, was your career as a librarian and before that as an educator mostly uncontroversial and not very public, meaning you didn't have real issues with parents or at board? I mean, what was it mostly pretty not controversial?
Oh, no controversy whatsoever. In fact, the opposite. I'm known in my community as being one of those teachers that is a really effective communicator. I love to have my parents involved in everything. And so when I was a teacher in the classroom, I sent out weekly emails. I encouraged them to email, call, write letters. And when you teach the same families over and over in the same small town, those families, those students, they become your family too. So I was the one that was known as the one to go to. The kids always come to me to tell me problems. I've had several students who, when they got older, I was the first person they came out to. And so just a lot of trust there. And I'm very proud of that.
You should be. When did it start? When did the trouble begin? What was the first sign?
The first trouble was, and let me say, it's at school, I haven't really had an issue at school. So I am a school librarian. The trouble that I had was I went and spoke as a resident at our public library. And so as a resident of our public library, I went and spoke and I talked about censorship of, I didn't want to see books by and about the LGBTQIA plus community and BIPOC communities, books censored. And I just really got attacked for it. And these people that have harassed me, they brought my school into it. They're the one that tagged my school. This is where she works. And I just went as a resident. So it just happened. I am a school librarian because even if I had still been a classroom teacher, I still would have gone and spoken at the public library board meeting.
Let's just get into just talking about some of the book banning and the arguments that people make, which are bad and pathetic and wrong. But I want you to take them on because I think it's important that we effectively communicate. It's so easy to read out of context a passage from a book and then say, you're teaching this to our kids. And I think the easiest way I always like to look at it is, first of all, that's a passage from the book. And second of all, that's not actually being taught to the kids. That's just available in the library for a kid to choose if they identify with that book. We can get to the books that they do teach that all the students read together, which are usually less controversial. But even when they are, I like it. I think that's important. But what do you say to those who would come to a board meeting and read a sexually graphic passage and say, you're teaching this to whatever age they choose?
You're right. No one's teaching them anything. It's optional reading in the school library. The thing about the passages that they read out of context, and it's always like the same 3 books, they read the one page out of context every time. And they'll say, oh, it's in the children's section next to green eggs and ham. Those books that are a little more graphic, if you take it out of context, those are books that are generally found in high schools. If they're found in high schools at all, and in public libraries, they're found in the teen section or the adult section. But when someone comes to the board, a school board meeting, and they'll read something out of context, and they'll insinuate it's in elementary schools and junior highs, and it's not. If it is in a school, it's generally in a high school. And in high schools, you have students that some are 18, 19, 20.
Yeah, and they say the craziest things to you, including something that was said to me, almost exactly the same thing I think was said to you. they accused me of wanting to teach anal sex to 8th graders. And my comeback, Amanda, was I was an 8th grade boy. All we talked about was butt sex, and that was before the internet. We were constantly making jokes about it. The point being, we knew what it was, but you know what school did? It taught us about the dangers and consequences of all kinds of sex, including anal sex. But the idea, my point was, the idea that you think your kids don't know this stuff. When we were young, we knew it. And now with the internet, the idea that it's in the library in school, they can look up anything they want, and they will, no matter how much you're searching their phone. Take that one on.
So I actually wrote an article for School Library Journal just about this. It was called The Dangers in Their Hands. They are walking around with phones and iPads and things. If they want to look up anal sex, they can just look on their phones. Right. They're not going to take the time to go find the one book that might mention it on one page in the hopes that they'll find something. It's ridiculous, but people want to sensationalize things, and it's really not about the books. It is about the books, and they are using the books to marginalize communities. But then they go further, because it's not always about the books, because then they go, oh, now we need to defund the library, and now we need to devalue the librarians and make it where they don't have to have requirements. And we need to, let's eliminate the library altogether. And so it's not really, it starts with the books and it goes to, they just want to wipe out libraries altogether. So they use that as an excuse. You've been very open and vulnerable in your writing and your speaking about what's happened to you and how you've dealt with it. What's happened to you? How have you dealt with it? I live in a somewhat small town. And so when a man makes a meme of you that says that you advocate teaching anal sex to 11-year-olds, which I will say that as a middle school librarian who teaches 5th and 6th grader, I professionally review our books. I doubt I have more than like a kiss or a handhold in any of the books in my library, because I'm not a high school, I'm a middle school. But a man made a meme about me, and it spread hundreds of times, and people believed it. And these are people I've known my entire life. And I just was trashed. And 2 years prior to that, I had been named the National Librarian of the Year. And so I was like riding this high. I've worked so hard my whole career. I got this award. This is so great. And then 2 years later, my name is mud. I can't even go grocery shopping. I can't go to my kids' high school events without someone calling me names. I'm recorded in public. They wear shirts to mock me at library board meetings. It's very immature, but it did have serious consequences. And I've lost weight. I lost chunks of hair. I became anemic. A whole host of physical and mental problems that I had because of these attacks. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's one thing when you're getting attacked on social media by anonymous people. It's another thing when you go on national TV or radio, as you have, as I have, and people say things again who saw you there. But it's when it's in your local, then it's scary. You were sleeping with a gun under your bed at one point. Yeah, I still do. Still does. You are in Louisiana. I guess everybody does. And I will say it hasn't stopped. So I wrote about past harassment for the past 2 years, but it hasn't stopped. One of the men that I'm currently in a lawsuit posted my address online last week, and he has a framed photo of me on his desk that he proudly displays in his pictures that he posts. And that to me is unhinged and insane. And so it's still happening. They're still doing it. A little more subversive, not as open as they were. But yeah, it's still happening. Does local law enforcement know about this and hopefully consider it of you? I would like to say they have taken it seriously, but that would be a lie. But I have an attorney, and we've looked at this. These people, they know how to go right to the line and tiptoe on it, and they don't cross it. They don't show up at my house. They stay far enough back. If they're filming me or recording me, it isn't a public place. What are you going to do? One of the men that harasses me tried to get a job at my school as a custodian so he could have keys to access the school library. What are they going to do? Arrest him for trying to get a job? Arrest a man for posting my address on the internet? It's harassment, but they tiptoe right up on the line. So their hands are tied in some ways. How do we get here? You write about it in the book. How do we get here? To this whole, it's white Christian nationalism. It's been in the works. These people it's been in the works for a while now, to all of these attacks. And what's happening to me I'm not unique. This is happening to hundreds and thousands of librarians and teachers all across the United States. And it's local fights, and it's orchestrated, and it's orchestrated by people that have money, that put money into dark money nonprofits where you can't trace the money. And they have these people like this group that harasses me that you can't find out who's donating to them and who's funding them. And they cause trouble. And it's so that they can change legislation, have power, and so that these people can have authoritarian control in schools and libraries and our places where we learn and access information.
Yeah, that's certainly the way I feel like I've seen it, but it's interesting to hear you say it that way. Chapter 6 of your book is Hell Hath No Fury, Like a Librarian Scorned. You write, growing up, I looked upon the school and public librarians in my life with reverence. They were the keepers of the books and opened the gates to knowledge. They were there to help me find books and access other worlds, always with a kind smile. As a child, I always thought that librarians were old because you tend to think of all adults as old when you're a young child. And there's a stereotype that librarians all keep their hair in a bun, wear cardigans, have cats, and walk around shushing people. Maybe that's what we once were. But there's a whole new type of librarian in the world now. While I can't say we don't favor cardigans, librarians are so much more than the stereotype. Little did I know growing up that librarians are secret bad asses. Boy, do I love that and this whole book. Explain, how are librarians? You don't look or seem or sound like a badass, but in many ways, librarians around the country like you are saving democracy in your district, one district at a time.
We take our job seriously, and I take my job seriously, and I am there to provide information and access for every single child in my school. Every single child, not just the white kids, not just the straight kids. I am there for every single child, and I am prepared to fight tooth and nail so that they can have a safe place to be. And I read recently a study by the Human Rights Coalition that said there's a very large percentage of students that are LGBTQIA+ that feel unsafe at school, but 9 out of 10 feel safe in school libraries. And to me, that's important. And librarians, we love kids, we love to read. And I don't know a single librarian who went into our field that doesn't want to serve the community. That's why we went into the field, to serve the community and serve the kids and do the best for all children, not just a percentage, a certain section.
We talk a lot about the issues around gender, sexual orientation, sex in general, and we've touched on that. But the other one, obviously, is race. How does banning books or censoring books, whatever books you want to choose, coincide with race and racism? You're down there in Louisiana. You guys are the OGs of racism down there. They're doing everything they can to not teach certain things, including why the Civil War started, is my understanding. African-American history, or even books that are written by young black authors or old dead black authors, James Baldwin, etc., are being banned. What's going on down there? Why does it matter? Especially for white kids, I think.
So I'll touch on the white kid thing first, because my child is a white kid. And I don't want her to think, because we live in a very white community, and I don't want her to think that, or I want her to know that there are other people out there. There are other people from all walks of life. And I don't want her to live here forever. I want her to travel, and I want her to see the world, and I want her to know of other races and cultures and religions and things like that. We are seeing a very large number of book challenges on particularly black authors. And it has huge effects, because even if a book is not banned, we're seeing large companies bow down to this pressure. And I'm not going to name the company, but there is a company that does a very large book fair business in schools. So it was a controversial thing last year. They were so pressured by these extremists that when I got my book fair, all of the books by black authors were in separate boxes. I won't say every single book, but majority were in separate boxes that said diversity boxes, and I could choose or choose not to put them out on the shelves. And it was Ruby Bridges. It was a picture book about Ruby Bridges. And one of the books was The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander. That is one, the Coretta Scott King, the Newbery, Caldecott. And it had a warning label on these books. These books are for children. There's nothing controversial in these books whatsoever. It was like the diversity box. I got so mad, I went on Twitter and tweeted about it. And then I got quoted in an article, and it became a whole thing. But I was mad, and I'm not using them for book fairs anymore until they change.
Yes. Does it rhyme with plastic?
It might.
All right, moving on. Well done. When you mentioned there's a process to try to get a book removed, which we're all learning. I just can't even believe that this is a thing. But I feel like in some states like Florida, it's one person can file a complaint. Like, how does it work in Louisiana and across the country, this terrible process? Because it would seem that we have a tyranny of the real minority, even in more conservative areas. There's a lot of conservative folks who don't like book banning. They don't like censorship in some rural conservative areas. They just don't like it. And it would seem that sometimes it's just a few cranks or crazy people that have way too much power to censor a book. That's wild to think such a small group would have so much power. Am I on to anything? Is this accurate?
It's accurate. We have just an example here in the neighboring parish of St. Tammany Parish, because we have parishes, not counties. There were over 200 book challenges, and they were done by 3 people. And they hadn't read any of the books. They just found it on the internet, and they did a list. And if you look in Florida, there are 2 main book banning people in Florida. And I'll say this, I do believe it is every person's right and every patron's right to challenge a book. You can challenge a book. You can question it. That doesn't mean the library is going to do what you ask of it, but they can examine it. But we're not seeing that. People with real honest challenges. We're talking people who file them by the hundreds, and they brag about it online, and they file them by the 100s. But what we're starting to see, especially like I've known in Florida, and I know Georgia enacted this. And Georgia enacted a law where you can only now file in a school library if your child attends that school. And in Florida, they're limiting it to 1 book a month.
Wow.
But what has happened, another thing that's happened is they'll limit it to residents in that county. And so there's a woman in Florida who has gotten legal guardianship, educational guardianship of kids in other counties so that she can challenge books.
Oh my goodness. I had not heard that.
And she's a teacher. She is a high school teacher. And we're talking books like, there's a book called Kitty Corn, and it's about a little kitten that wants to be a unicorn when she grows up. And it's so innocuous, and it's for little children, and it's so sweet and fun. But they say it's promoting a transgender ideology.
Because you can be a cat and then you can turn into a unicorn? Yeah,
apparently a cat,
it's crazy when they say you're allowing. I had this argument with a person I knew, like, these days parents are allowing their kids to pretend they're anything. I'm like, these days, that's the history of humanity. Every child pretended. I pretended I was a football and a truck and a girl and a hero and a rocket ship. And it's all about pretending and making believe and finding where you are and how you exist in the world and whatever your identity is, which sometimes has to do with your sexual orientation, but more likely than anything else has to do with like what you're interested in, from sports to role-playing games to art to music, whatever it is, that you're trying to be that. And, oh my gosh, what if you switch? What if you become more interested in skateboarding now or drawing? Isn't that childhood as a human in any country?
I would think so. I pretended I was Mary Lou Retton after I saw her in the 1984 Olympics. I pretended I can remember riding my sister on my bike in the front and making her pretend to be E.T. while I was Elliot on the bike. You just pretend growing up, and I don't understand. It blows my mind. It reminds me of when I was little and the Dungeons and Dragons was big, and then there was like the Satanic Panic and all of that. But this is like times 100, I feel. And real people are involved now. Real people are involved. I've taught in my 24 years as an educator. I've taught children that have grown up, become adults, and taken their own lives because they're members of the LGBTQ community, and they felt ostracized. And I'm not going to participate or be silent in that anymore. They will know they're safe, and they will know at least somebody in their community loves them and is there for them. There's no agenda unless the agenda is love and kindness and empathy.
Yeah, so well said and so well written in your book. And I am so excited to have met you and connected with you. And I think everybody should get this book and follow you and support your work, as so many other people have. It seems like a lot of the strength that you've gained is through your colleagues. Librarians around the country are dealing with this. It's easy to look at your situation and say this is a Louisiana thing. It's an every state thing. Every state librarian, the most, quote, blue liberal states, we've got these folks who are making all kinds of noise and threatening librarians. You were threatened to be put in jail. They tried to pass a law, I think. Is that right?
They did. And that was actually my former school board representative, who's now a state representative, who was a friend of mine who in 2021, when I got National Librarian of the Year, stood up in front of the school board, cried and said I was one of the best things that ever happened in this community. And then you fast forward 2 years later, she's believing everything, these lies people say about me. And then she filed a bill to, if librarians attended their professional learning conferences, the American Library Association conference, we could do 2 years hard labor in prison.
It seems completely unhinged. Did she strike you as that kind of person, or was she somehow radicalized?
No, she was never like that. And I didn't even get to write about that in the book because it happened after I wrote it. And I do write about her in the book, but it's like she's been radicalized. But when she ran for state representative, that's where you start seeing these PACs and these nonprofits that are supporting these politicians. And if politicians stir up these fake controversies to get votes, so that they can come in with fake solutions or solutions to problems that don't exist.
It's exactly what's happening. It's exactly you're talking about state houses and legislatures in states and U.S. Congress. I'm talking about my school board. We lost 3 seats in May in New York State, just north of New York City, over a lie about trans kids going to bathrooms, and that it was the board that passed this law. When, of course, it was the state that passed the law. They said they would reverse it. They won all 3 seats, Amanda. And then, of course, when they got in power on the Board of Education, of course they can't change it. It's the law. And they didn't change it. And nobody cares, even though the town was divided over this law. But they won the election, and now they're in charge, and they have a lot of power at the school board, as you know as well as anybody.
They do. And you'll see that. You'll see that at school boards, public library boards, city councils, county councils, state legislatures. They use the library as an excuse. They're like, look at this one page from this book that may or may not even be in the school library. And they'll say, now you need to vote for me so I can be in control. All of these people with money pay for them to be in control. And they say, when I'm elected, I will change it and whatever. But there's nothing to change because there's nothing that was actually wrong in the first place.
Very well said. I'll wrap it by the way you close the book or towards the end. You talk about what you can do in your own community. It's hard. It's really hard to win. It's really hard to beat back a lie. I have a shred of empathy for anybody who buys a lie and then say storms the Capitol or a pizza place because they think it's a child trafficking. If people believe these things, I understand why sometimes they take action, but it's really hard for those of us that know this is just complete bullshit and nonsense to fight back about the lie that makes it around the world 3 times before the truth gets its shoes on, or whatever that phrase is. So what do you do? What are your suggestions for what we can do in our own communities and further?
I think everybody needs to pay attention. There's a lot of people that are apathetic. So people aren't paying attention until it's too late. Then it's too late. And what are you going to do? You need to pay attention. Watch your school board meetings. Almost every school board, public board meetings are usually streamed and their agendas are posted in advance. Read the agendas, watch it online from home, pay attention. You have to vote. You have to get out and vote. And what's very important, which is opposite of what people think, your knee-jerk reaction is to go right back at them and try to argue with them. And there's things I wanted to say to these people. I still do, but you can't, because we have to set better examples when we're trying to fix these things, because kids are watching. And these people that are trashing educators and librarians are setting horrible examples for children, and they're being ugly. And our whole country has become this just mean, hateful place. So if you are going to be in a position where you go to speak out with kindness and rationality and just push the truth, that's all you have to do is push the truth, and eventually enough people will listen. And it'll take time. It's taken me 2 years. They still are, but it happens. It's just slow and steady. And you will win some battles, and you will win some skirmishes and lose some skirmishes. But if you keep at it, we'll win the war.
I so think you're right. And at the end of your book, you have this chapter titled, Don't Let Anyone Dull Your Sparkle. You have this sparkle about you, which Oprah and so many others have seen. And your honesty, your vulnerability, your passion, and your drive. And I know you're not fearless. I have fear. We have fear. But I think, as you quote so many amazing civil rights leaders and so on, what you seem to fear is the same thing I fear. I fear not being the change I want to see. I fear being silent. I can't not speak out because of the position I have, because you've talked about your privilege, not only being a white woman in America, but a librarian with a master's degree and tons of years of experience. And now this book, and now all of this attention, you're only going to speak out more. No one can dull your sparkle. What do you tell those of us who want to quit?
Oh, don't give up. And you're going to have low days. And some days you are going to have to walk away for your own mental health, and you take a little break, turn off the social media, take a little break, but don't give up. Go back at it, because there's kids out there that need us. And I just want to set a good example for my child and every other child in my community.
You're doing a great job, Amanda. I'm so excited to talk to you. I look forward to talking to you again. If there's anything I can do or we can do, I don't think you need it anymore, because you're friends with Oprah. Unbelievable. Hilarious. Thank you for joining me.
That was amazing.
Yeah, isn't she great? Amanda Jones, everybody. I hope you liked it, and definitely follow her on social media. All the links to learn more about Amanda in today's show notes. Thank you very much for your support this week, your patience with my day off. That was spontaneous, happens from time to time. Very excited about what's coming next week, and I cannot do it without your support, especially you bumblebees here at the end. John Carroll writes the music for this show. JohnCarroll.org. Support him there. Take it away, my friend.
Stand up, let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. See the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.